Hello, everyone. I'm Brendan Frey, CEO and founder of Deep Genomics. The company harnesses artificial intelligence and genome biology to accelerate medical advances and create life-changing therapies. I'm pleased to be here today with Tal Zaks. Tal, you made important contributions in a variety of ways, but you're probably best known as the Chief Medical Officer of Moderna. There you advanced dozens of programs in collaboration with the Moderna team, and also brought us the COVID-19 vaccine. Tal, as always, it's a pleasure to meet with you. I'm excited about today because for a change, I get to be the one asking questions.
Hi, Brendan. It's great to see you again, and I really look forward to today's conversation.
So you and I first met in 2018 before the pandemic, when Moderna was at a stage that is similar to where Deep Genomics is now. You joined our strategic advisory board in the fall of 2021, and I'd love to know what excites you about Deep Genomics and what drew you to us.
It's a combination of two things. I'm a simple human being. I only need two things to be happy: to feel that I'm engaged in making a difference, and to enjoy the people I'm doing it with. And I think when you and I started talking, I was really taken by the combination that you bring to the table of the depth and know-how in this very interesting domain, and the way in which you put it to use for the better of mankind, to do really something meaningful in life. And that super resonated with me. And I felt that if I had an opportunity to join you on this journey, both to learn and satisfy some of my own curiosity in a fascinating emerging field, and hopefully to help you and the company as well achieve its mission, what more could I ask?
You had a very successful career at Moderna, advancing more than 24 preclinical and clinical programs. When you think back on that, can you comment on some of the lessons that you learned? For example, how did you have the right information to make decisions about programs, and maybe also in the context of digital therapies as well, and kind of the platform way of thinking about things would be helpful.
So I joined Moderna because the allure of making medicines in a way that was so replicable, it really spoke to a digital backbone of what one can do with nucleotide therapy. The notion that every drug coming out of our production line is actually kind of the same thing. All you do is change the sequence and out comes a different drug. And by the way, you can design drugs against, wild type proteins, made up proteins, combinations of proteins. That was super attractive. We think of our drugs at Moderna as information drugs, and I think by and large your drugs fit that same paradigm. The challenge then is how to scale that when that digital world actually meets, if you will, the real world of drug development, when you actually get into patients. And I affectionately call that the clutch problem. You've got an engine that's spinning at a digital speed, and then you got to connect the wheels to actually get the car moving. And I sort of lived at the interface of that. And for me, the beauty was thinking about scaling a development organization different to actually make good on that promise. And when you have a wide array of opportunities, what does it take to make the best kind of choices? And they come from very opposite sides of the spectrum almost. And this is one of the beauties of the age in which we live. On one hand, decisions take really people digging into data, thinking long and hard about problems, and having a dialogue among them. And I think one of the lessons I took away from my time at Moderna was how much rethinking had to be done. We'd go in there and we'd think, okay, we want to do program A, B, and C. And a month later, we'd see new data and we'd say, well, we should start with C, then maybe A, then maybe B. And then 2 months would go by and we'd get more data. And now I can tell you that this was at periods super frustrating to the organization, right? Because okay, you look at the executive and see these guys know what they're doing. They said you go A, and a month later these guys say, well, we still know what we're doing now. We say go B, and it's like that's hard. But you have to have that agility in an environment where you're generating data rapidly, where your learning is exponential. You have to have the honesty and the agility to be able to change based on the data. I don't know of any better way of making decisions. And
And this idea of a programmable medicine is important, and I just want to touch on that again, and you alluded to it. The therapeutic candidates we create at Deep Genomics are steric blocking oligonucleotides, or SBOs. And as you mentioned, they're literally a digital sequence of letters of nucleotides. At their core, they are a digital sequence of letters. We can alter the protein that's being produced. And so from my perspective, this is really the first time in history, just in the last decade, that we've had this digital toolkit for creating medicines. And what I wanted to chat with you a little bit about is the idea that the interface between medicine and artificial intelligence does require a digital informatics interface. If you look at something like a peptide or a small molecule or biologic, it's really hard to formulate those therapies digitally. But steric blocking oligos and other kinds of therapies like this are really nicely formulated digitally. I'm just wondering if you have any further thoughts on this approach.
Biology doesn't work sequentially, it works massively in parallel. What I find fascinating is the fact that you can start to deconvolute the biggest mystery in life, which is the relationship between genotype and phenotype. Mm-hmm. When you think about it, you're bringing digital tools into that space exactly. Nearly all of our drugs are inhibitory in nature. Very few of our medicines are actually stimulate or upregulate anything. And you can actually, with your platform, through this amazing understanding of the space, think of applications where you can get a pharmacological and a medicinal benefit out of both downregulating and upregulating. And I just think that's really opens up a world of opportunity.
Say that the future of medicine is going to require untangling complex biology at scale and accurately. And I'd love to know what you think about this. So there's complexity, scale, and accuracy. Complexity is important because biology is complex. Scale is necessary because the number of opportunities is vast. We can look at the entire genome to look for potential therapeutic opportunities. And accuracy is important because as soon as you can look large scale across the entire genome and across a lot of different biological mechanisms, you need accuracy so you know which ones to prioritize, which ones to go after, which ones to move into the wet lab. And really, humans are not good at those three things. I'm curious what you think about my assertion that the future of medicine, therefore, will rely on artificial intelligence because AI is the only technology we have to address scale, accuracy, and complexity.
We're victims of our own success in the modern era of science because the success of modern medicine has been the success of reductionist biology. The way we think as scientists that has been so successful is actually started to get a little bit in the way of figuring out how to do complex medicines. I'm a cancer immunologist, which means I know enough about immunology to be dangerous. And in the classic days of immunology, we used to think of, okay, we have these effector cells and the helper cells. So there's two populations of T cells, and then there's T cells and NK cells. Everything is binary for us physicians, right? We're simpletons. It either is this way or that way. Biology and medicine don't work that way, right? It's a much more complicated. And if you start to apply machine learning tools to those kinds of data, you start to emerge with an understanding of biology and ultimately pathophysiology that we just couldn't do before. And that has to do with the utility of these kinds of tools to solve complexity or to understand value of information out of complexity in a way that's actionable that previously we couldn't.
Whereas at Deep Genomics, because all of our machine learning predictors mimic molecular and cell biology, when our systems identify a target, they don't just say this is the gene to go after, but they say these are the mutations and these are the mechanisms of those mutations are disrupting and causing, say, a decrease or an increase in the protein level that's pathogenic. And here's the mechanism you can use to fix the problem. So our machine learning techniques output explanations that can be validated in the lab. I'm just wondering if you could further comment on that and what you see as the advantage of that approach.
The ability of your platform, first, I believe in the data space as we've discussed up until now, but more importantly, I've seen your ability to set an experiment, tell me this is what I'm going to predict, and then the output can be validated in a wet lab. I can take this mutation that nobody understands why works, and I can actually predict that it's going to do X, Y, and Z, and then I can go into the wet lab and show you that it indeed does that. For me, that is the validation, and that what makes what you have different, robust, believable, scalable, and actually gives me confidence that it will translate to the next step, which is, okay, if I can predict that this is how I can change the phenotype based on my understanding of RNA biology, this is how I can change protein expression, and this is what it will lead to, then the confidence that this will actually translate into a useful drug for somebody to make them feel better, live longer, etc., that confidence is much higher.
Some stakeholders are skeptical about the potential of AI, and I think we all have healthy skepticism. What kind of proof points do you think are needed to demonstrate that AI is a game changer?
If you connect the dots of what AI has done and can do, then you realize it's just a matter of time. I think what it's going to take is simply ongoing validation. When people see the fruits of those tools, they will stop asking kind of why. You know, in the old days, before you got into a car and turned on the engine, you wanted to understand how the internal combustion engine worked when you came from a horse and a buggy. Well, today, when we get on a car and turn on the engine, you know, half of us don't even know if the engine is that thing in the front or that thing in the back anymore. And over time, once we as a society get comfortable with the validated outcomes, and in your case, in the case of deep genomics, that's going to be deep medicines. And remember, at the end of the day, your win will be measured first in models of pathophysiology and then as medicines in the clinic. And that's going to be incontrovertible.
You and I have a chat like this 10 years from now. What do you imagine we may have accomplished? How will AI have transformed the landscape of drug discovery?
So I think I dream of it in two levels. I think the first level is that 10 years from now, we will have several successful medicines that are actually treating hard to treat diseases. At the next level, and this is where I don't know if 10 years are enough, but they may be on the cusp of it. I hope that this emerging understanding of genotype phenotype will enable us to treat more complex diseases with complex drugs, but at earlier and earlier stages of the disease process. This is ultimately in a journey to prolong life and alleviate suffering from disease, and one can only dream of where that journey will take us. I do have a question for you, you know, as the doc kind of trying to understand the new technology coming from an IT space, how it impinges my world. What's been your experience as somebody who actually came into this world from more of an engineering background, and a very astute one at that?
Experience. When we first started applying our AI systems in the field of medicine, we looked at the problem of molecular diagnostics, essentially. So taking a patient mutation and figuring out what the mechanism was. And we did that for a while and got really good at that. And we had imagined that we would actually out-license that kind of information to other companies who could then develop drugs. But then we discovered digital medicines and programmable medicines, which we've been talking about today, and realized that we could do that ourselves, and started building out our experimental biology team and synthesizing oligonucleotides and testing them. And by this point in time, we've tested over 20,000 oligonucleotides. And this keeps happening over and over. So the more we do, the more we realize that this engineering approach to drug discovery and development can be applied. And more recently, we've even built composite biomarkers where we'll combine together 10 or 12 biomarkers through a machine learning system to predict patient outcome. And using those kinds of systems, we realized we could reduce the number of patients we need for a phase 3 trial by a factor of 3. So it's been wonderful. The more we do, the more we discover that we can use our AI systems to tackle other problems in drug discovery and development. Tal, as always, it was a pleasure speaking with you, and I'm looking forward to the next conversation.
Same here, Brendan, and all the best to you and the team at Genomics. I'm rooting for you, and I can't wait to see your medicines make it to the clinic.